What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to The Nerdy Narrative. This is a channel where I like to talk about all sorts of bookish related fun, primarily in the science fiction, fantasy, horror genres, but I do like to dip my toes into other genres as well. In today's episode of fun, the genre we're going to be dipping our toes into is horror. The book I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about today is Shelter for the Damned by Mike Thorn. Shelter for the Damned was available for purchase on February the 26th, and it was published by Journalstone. I know Mike also has a short story collection that he's put out, plus he's had a ton of things published in various magazines, anthologies, and on podcasts. I did receive a copy of Shelter for the Damned prior to publication from the author in exchange for an honest review. Just to briefly summarize you on the plot for this little horror story, the story focuses on 3 teenage boys. The author describes these 3 boys exactly how I remember boys acting when I was that age. They felt so real and just actual. The thing that I really like about horror stories, just what really pulls me in, when it has that element of the possibility of it being real. And Mike really pulls that off. This story opens, these 3 teenage boys are just sneaking off to smoke cigarettes. I mean, that is exactly what you would expect a teenage boy to do. No surprise. The story has a very small town feel to it. So of course the boys are trying to find somewhere secluded where they can smoke hidden from any prying eyes that might be watching. So one of the boys has a really abusive father, another one comes from a very strict family, and the other one, the dad definitely has some abusive tendencies, but he's not as overboard as the first one I mentioned. At any rate, they all 3 have a very good reason for wanting to hide to do this. If I had been in their situation, I think I would have been too scared to try and sneak off and smoke, but boys will be boys, won't they? So as a result, the boys happen upon the shack. The shack just seems to kind of appear out of nowhere. They don't remember seeing it before, noticing it, but it is just an ordinary looking shack. So it's quite possible it just blended into the background. They didn't have a use for it then, so they didn't notice it. But now that they're trying to get out of sight, they happen to notice it. There's definitely a vibe. There's definitely a different feel to the atmosphere around it. Kind of like the feeling of stay away, don't go any nearer. But teenage boys are just kind of egging each other on, so they kind of all fight through their fear. They enter the shack, the feeling goes away. They have a great time smoking. They are too scared to go up to the 2nd floor, however. Of course, with me telling you up front it's a horror story and they're sneaking off to smoke, do something they shouldn't, you can probably deduce that entering the shack is what releases the malevolent force that drives the rest of the story forward. So at this point, a lot of the boxes are checked for me to have a good time with this horror story. I love the cover art. I'm shallow in that regard. A good cover goes a long way with me. But then you have the whole element of where the author just made it a very real seeming experience. The boys were just described just the way a sullen, angsty 15-year-old boy would be. I thought it was fantastic. I felt that I was a part of the town. The town felt like it was just on the edge of my memory of somewhere that I knew. So I really liked that. I was in that story. The writing style was so easy to just flow with. It was very conversational. It felt like someone was telling me the story instead of me reading it, if that makes sense. And they were an excellent storyteller. Here is where it kind of lost me. And I do have to make the disclaimer that reading is subjective to the person reading it. So this is just my opinion. I also have to admit to you, I'm not an author, I'm not an editor. This is just my opinion of this book and my experience with it and what I think would have made it better for me. You may agree, you may disagree, you may want to go read it for yourself and then come back and us talk about it. However you want to approach it, I'm good with. Chapters 1 through 9 were definitely great character building sections, and it was just that slow build suspense. But with it being a horror story, and you know that going in, nothing scary happened until chapter 10, which was pretty much midway through the book. In my personal, humble opinion, chapter 10 should have been chapter 1. Because if you had started off this horror book with chapter 10, that would have immediately gotten your attention, got you completely pulled in, and then you're going to be interested in chapters 1 through 9. Because when you get hit with the action, like you have something big that happens, then if you want to do that slow build suspense character development, that is going to work better because you pull everybody in right away. A lot of people aren't character driven readers. They may not want to make it through 9 chapters or half a book before they see any action or payoff from that horror aspect. You know, if somebody's picking up a horror book, you know, chances are they're a horror fan. That's what they're there for. That's what they're addicted to, like me. That's going to pull them in. I would have definitely, if I had been an editor, I would have made chapter 10, chapter 1. Then I would have stuck chapters 1 through 9 in. I'm not the biggest fan of unresolved endings. I'm okay with them if the author gives me enough information where I can spend the next 2 to 3 weeks coming up with endless scenarios of how it could have ended. That's kind of fun. But unfortunately, in this particular book, we are never actually told what this malevolent force is, where it came from, why it's there, and what its purpose is. Like, we get no information whatsoever. And I just didn't care for that so much. As a result of not really having a resolved ending and then not being given any information for me to suppose my own endings, that affected my personal reading enjoyment. I liked it, but I didn't love it. The bar for what could have been done with this story was very, very high. And it's possible that perhaps Mike Thorn's going to write more in regards to either the force behind the shack or the shack itself. Like, if I knew there was a sequel coming, I would definitely have a bit of a different opinion, because then I would think, okay, this is our introduction to a series. We're going to get more explained as we go through. That would have been a little different. Maybe that's what's going to happen. I'm not sure. I will absolutely continue reading the series if that is what happens, and I absolutely plan to read more of Mike Thorn's work. I loved his writing style. I loved his ability to tell a story. You know, this one just didn't work for me. It's kind of like Jim Butcher and Battleground with the Dresden Files. You know, books 1 through 17 were almost all 5-star reads for me, and then I get to book 18 and I didn't like it. It's okay. It happens. Sometimes you're not going to love every book an author puts out. That's okay. It's okay. But what I got, I did like enough that I do want to read more of Mike Thorn's work. So that's the positive takeaway from it. Those are just my honest thoughts and opinions regarding Shelter for the Damned. I did give it a 3-star rating on Goodreads. 3 stars for me still means I thought it was a good book. Currently on Goodreads at the time of this review, 41 ratings and an average of 4.34 stars there. So if you are interested to know more before you form your opinion about whether or not you want to add this one to your TBR, pop over to Goodreads, read those other reviews, and see what you think. That will do it for my thoughts and opinions regarding Shelter for the Damned by Mike Thorn. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am so appreciative of you taking time out of your day to see what is going on in my little corner of the world. I hope your morning got off to a great start. I hope the rest of your day is absolutely fantastic. I'll see you soon.